My name is Belhadj. I've been involved in organising within the Palestine movement in Manchester for the last few years, particularly since 2022-2021, when we had massive expansion of the Palestine movement, which since then was then followed by, since October the 7th, the even bigger expansion. And I'm talking because of the importance of this struggle against imperialism, against Zionism, to the party, to the movement that we're trying to build here. Because we have so much to learn as a left from these anti-imperialist struggles, both abroad and within the UK, where people acting on behalf of Palestine, on behalf of other movements, have been at the front line of achieving actual, tangible changes and securing a breakdown of the military-industrial complex and trying closing down arms factories, making change. Now, it's incredibly important that when we build our movements, they recognise an internationalist perspective that we are not just fighting for the working class in this country, we're fighting for the global working class. Liberation for us has to come alongside liberation for all of the world. And to do one without the other leaves our revolution incomplete and makes it unsustainable, and it makes it impossible for us to actually achieve the breakdown of capitalism that we want. Because while our leaders exploit us and exploit the working class of this country, they also bribe the working class of this country with the spoils of colonialism that they're bringing in from abroad. And Israel is a prime example of this, because the Zionist state, it is doing exactly what our state would want to do to us if it had the power to do so. And supporting Palestine and Palestinian resistance is an essential part of that. And what we have to do is struggle against that over and over again and make sure that we maintain clear red lines. We also know that this movement, this chance at building the party would never have happened without the movement, without Palestine. Because that is what mobilized, that's what allowed so many people in recent years to see through what's going on, because the genocide, the accelerated genocide that's happened now, has been so blatant, so outrageous, that even people who previously had their eyes closed have been forced to see what's going on. And that context has given rise to this moment where we're able to try, maybe, we'll see if it works, but try and set the left on the right path. And when we're talking about reuniting the left, uniting the left. Left is not just about all our different organisations on the left, is traditionally on the left. It's also about the social movements. And those social movements are how the party can build real power, because we cannot just be there for electoral victories. What we have to be there for is to win, and to win change in our communities. Movements like the Palestine movement have been able to shut down arms factories. They've been able to close down companies that refuse to cut their ties with Israel. And these wins, if these tactics are duplicated across the movement and shared for the purpose of fighting for everyone, can lead to real victories without us even getting near into electoral power. And it's important that we build the ability of communities to act. And we do that by learning from the Palestine movement and applying that. And on other topics, we need to be very clear in our red lines. We cannot be a party that allows genocide to happen. We cannot be a party that normalizes any aspect of Zionism. This is an essential position, because if you decide you tolerate a two-state solution, what you're saying is that you think genocide is okay as long as it's done in a specific area, that apartheid is okay as long as it's done in a specific area. It must be not okay across every single part of the world, and we cannot be self-consistent and fight for our own liberation if we are trying to sell out and compromise and support advancing positions that do not align with the movements on the ground in imperial states, not just aligning as many in the leadership of this party currently and previous Labour parties have done, so align with the bourgeois classes of the Palestinian movement, such as the Palestinian Authority, and those forces who seek to undermine the forces of revolution there. And in the same way, one of the biggest tools against us and against the movement is built off their repression of the Palestinian movement, because the terrorism legislation, now Palestine actions describe what happens next if an effective left opposition comes in. The state will then try to go after them and to begin weaponizing these laws of terrorism to suppress the movement and suppress our ability to make change. So we have to be at the forefront of campaigning for the freedom of all political prisoners in the UK. That's a central part of our struggle. We have so much to learn, and we can't just be falling back on ways of the past, where many of these movements have not been part of the left in reality. They've not been part of the organised movement to try and make change. So we have to build our capability to bring them in and allow us to then achieve power, and achieve power to make real change, not just the tinker around the edges as we have.
I'm maybe going to talk about the whole situation in the Middle East, because the Palestinian issue is very important, but it has consequences for the rest of the region. And in my opinion, Israel's ambitions to become a superpower in the region has consequences for everyone beyond Gaza. This supposed ceasefire is not a ceasefire. Hamas is not fighting right now, but Israel continues its bombings. Every night, every day, you can read about the number of people who've been killed by Israeli bombings. So this is a very one-sided ceasefire. The three sponsors, US, Qatar, Egypt, none of them are the friends of the Palestinians. They have no interest in defending the Palestinians. And so the plight of the Palestinians is in a very dangerous situation. They are getting more food than before, but that's all you can say. You can't say that the situation has improved. But we are facing a very risky situation elsewhere. Only this week, Israel killed a Hezbollah military person, allegedly. I don't know whether he was, probably he was, in Beirut through a bombing. Right? These assassinations have become the norm. They have been legitimized by countries that supposedly were telling countries such as Iran or North Korea, you can't assassinate people in another country. Now it's become the norm, and the supporters of the rule of law are saying nothing about it. And this has, for those social imperialists who support these kind of assassinations, I have a message. Wait until they come for you, because that's where you will end up. This is silly to support assassination in Iran or Hezbollah because we don't like them, because we don't support their ideology or their politics. The dangers are very serious. However, this end of the pretense of rule of law, this end of the pretense of a national, international order where civilized West was telling the idiot, barbarous global South how to behave, has created its own rebellion, the rebellion of the youth who, as you said, have become anti-colonial. They're anti-imperialist, they're anti-colonial. They see these movements as colonial aggression. Renewal of colonial aggression is important and is something that we can build on. But the region is waiting for another war. The region is waiting for a war the second phase of Israel's war on Iran. And it's not just the people in Iran who are very nervous about this. I can see that even the butcher of Riyadh, Mr. MBS, is worried about this, as he mentioned in his visit to Trump. Why is MBS worried? He's not worried about Iran's Islamic Republic. He's not a friend of the Iranian people, and he's not a friend of the government either. But more importantly, he's definitely not a friend of the Iranian people. He's worried because the consequences of a second attack by Israel on Iran are extremely unpredictable. They are unpredictable if the regime survives, but they're also unpredictable if the regime falls. So in scenario one, propagated by Netanyahu, occasionally supported by Trump and occasionally disputed by Trump, the Islamic Republic will fall. Israel had hopes that the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, the Zionist supporter inside the Iranian opposition, in exile for more than 40 years, will lead a smooth regime change. Well, we've seen the smooth regime changes propagated by Zionists and the US, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, they all come to mind. And in such a scenario, first of all, such scenario, in my opinion, is unlikely. Regimes don't fall that easily. Regime change is in a country as vast as Iran is impossible without land invasion, and the US cannot even consider, hypothetically, a land invasion of a country as big as Iran and with the kind of borders Iran has. So militarily, that has been already ruled out. But imagine such a regime change does happen. Then you will have the scenario of civil wars. This is what Israel wants. Because for Israel, the destruction of Iran as a country, not the current rulers who many people, who I would say 80% of the Iranian population don't like. Whether they are against it or not is a different matter, but 80% of the population don't like. It's not the regime, it's the country. It's a big country and therefore a rival for Israel in terms of regional hegemony, regional power. It wants civil war, it wants the destruction of a unified land so that we would have 5, 6 groups fighting each other. Why is MBS worried about that? MBS is worried because he thinks this might spill over. There is a risk. You can't have civil wars in a country as vast as Iran with nationalities associated with other countries that will not spill over. Turkey will get involved in defense of one section. Turkey will get involved against the Kurds. The Arabs might get involved in various ways. Pakistan will get involved. So for MBS, the situation is risky. It might endanger this dream of the AI city Trump has sold him, or whatever other illusions Trump has sold. But imagine the Islamic Republic survives. If it survives, it's also bad, not just for MBS, but for Qatar, for the Gulf countries, for all the countries in the region. Why is it dangerous? Because we don't know how this regime will then react. It might close the Strait of Hormuz. That's the only one of the few options it has. And then we have these whole stories told to us by sections of the media, by most of the media, about the nuclear weapons. This is a myth, this is a story. The war was never about nuclear weapons. The negotiations between Trump and Iran were never about nuclear weapons. There are far more important issues involved here. Iran hasn't yet got nuclear weapons capability. It's very close to it. But even if it reached that, it has no capability of delivering nuclear weapons. And that makes it impossible for Iran to be a threat. In a region where Pakistan has nuclear weapons, where Israel has hundreds of nuclear weapons, and does not even admit to having such weapons. So we are talking of creating illusions only to be able to justify further wars. The situation is dangerous. The countries of the region are probably less stable than Iran. In Jordan, the support for the Palestinians is very strong, and the fact that the king suppresses this opposition will, at some stage, erupt. Egypt is not a stable country. Support for Palestinians is growing, and again, the idea is that you equate support for the Palestinians with being supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood is not really sustainable for long. Morocco is the only country we actually see large demonstrations in support of the Palestinians, despite the repression, despite the fact that there is quite a lot of attacks against the demonstrators. So the whole region is basically in a very dangerous and unstable situation in many ways. That is why your party, or whatever remains of your party after the next 2 days, has to be unequivocally anti-Zionist. We can't have a situation where the leader of the party can't openly say he is anti-Zionist, where by waffling he tries to avoid a correct question. But it also must be an anti-imperialist party, and because it's not just Zionism. These dictators of the Middle East, Sisi in Egypt, the king of Jordan, of Morocco, they are there because they are good servants of imperialism. So the party has to be anti-Zionist, but also anti-imperialist. And I would add that as much as we should fight against all the firms that work militarily or in cooperation with the Zionist state, we must realize that it's the states in US, in UK, in France, in Germany, who are the enemy of the working class in the Middle East. So that internationalism must show itself not just in support of the Palestinians, not just against the Zionist state, but for the working class in the Middle East. And that can only be achieved by a party that is unequivocally anti-Zionist and anti-imperialist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We want to open for questions and answers. Please, if you have any questions and answers, or if you'd like to take part in any debates, please go ahead. Any questions?
Anybody like to speak?
Big mouth will always find something. Yeah, one of there are going to be a lot of key tests of your party, and one of them, I think, concerns: is it willing to confront the UK state over the prescription of Palestine action? Because, quite frankly, that is a litmus test for anybody at the moment, because it involves risking arrest. I don't know how the case got on. I believe it was held on Tuesday. I didn't hear anything at the High Court about the prescription of Palestine action. But I think we need to push on that particular question. Yassamine is quite correct in that we need to be unequivocally anti-imperialist as well, because there is no such thing as socialism in one country, never has been, never will be, less so in the age of neoliberal globalisation than ever before. It's an unpopular view, but it's based on the most recent history writing and political science writing that, in fact, the working class in the West has a relatively comfortable existence precisely because of the ongoing expropriation, not just exploitation, in the global South. That's an uncomfortable fact for a lot of people, but it has got one hell of a lot of substantiation behind it. And it is something that, in my view at least, renders irrelevant any major political tendency or organisation or party that is not anti-imperialist, because it is based, if it's not, it is based on a delusion. Nobody else?
Yeah, I want to just, in that vein, I mean, the fact that Palestine action can be banned as terrorist, the fact that you can, you criticize Israel and that makes you an anti-Semite. I mean, this campaign has been playing out for a while, hasn't it? It has been playing out in Germany first, actually a couple of decades ago, but it didn't really go that well. It went quite well, but not as well as it did when Jeremy Corbyn became leader of the Labour Party. I think that was a huge, an effort was made, and very successfully so, to follow two goals basically. One, yes, to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn and the left. The US's main ally in Europe could not possibly be led by somebody who's not exactly a revolutionary socialist, but somebody who criticizes what imperialism is doing, even that which we, in here might think is pretty lame the way he does it, but he is a critic of imperialism, what imperialism is doing, Jeremy Corbyn. But it was a way to get rid of him, and it got a way, of course, to silence people who are critical of what Israel is doing. And by, unfortunately, Jeremy Corbyn and his allies deciding to give up on that fight and to roll over and to accept the IRA fake definition of anti-Semitism, I think they have played quite a substantial role, and one that they have not taken responsibility for, unfortunately, a substantial role in getting us to the situation where we are now, where speaking out for the Palestinians is almost always, they can now, those, bourgeois papers can claim that's anti-Semitic. The doctor who was banned, I don't agree with her comments necessarily, but she can't operate, she can't treat people because she tweeted something. How bloody ridiculous. But it has become a real witch hunt, a real, the anti-Semitism smears used against Corbyn, didn't stand up to, have become one of the main weapons of bourgeoisie against the left, and is something that, comments have said, absolutely, if your party fails on this, and it's failed on a lot of things already just being launched, if it fails on this, fails on democracy, fails on letting people join, if you're wearing the wrong kind of socialism, it is failure on quite a lot of fronts already from day one, from today. I'm just wondering how both of you see this, that campaign, and then of course it is quite bizarre to see the man who they targeted this witch hunt at, and quite successfully so, and smeared his name, Jeremy Corbyn, and smeared his supporters, is now expelling and smearing as communists, as troublemakers, as wreckers, as infiltrators, etc. Not him personally, of course, he wouldn't hurt a fly, but he has other people to do that for him. So Len McCluskey is going around, at the rally yesterday, speaking against the sectarians who disrupt everything and wreck everything. From my perspective, it's the party's been wrecked very much from one direction, and it's not the left who's wrecking your party. So your kind of assessment on that witch hunt, witch hunts that spiral out of control. I think we're still reaping what's been sown in the Labour Party, that witch hunt that started now. We're still dealing with both the anti-communist left and the anti-Semitism smear campaign. Both, really took off in the Labour Party.
Anyone else?
Thanks. Yes. Today being International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people is ironic, and I just thought that's what the first thing that should have been said at conference this morning. It got there eventually. Jeremy eventually said it within his speech, but I just thought that we should have taken the opportunity to put that across very first thing, because, as Tina said, the lessons have not been shown to have been learned, particularly in regards to Jeremy and the witch hunt that was conducted. So many good socialists thrown out the Labour Party, which he has never admitted to or apologised to these comrades for and taken responsibility. I mean, I don't know, he mentioned the other day in one of his, in the interview with the New Statesman, he's talked about the book I've written, or the book he's got coming out. But, I mean, I used to sort of give him the benefit of the doubt and think that that's what he's going to do. He's going to lay it all out on the line, the mistakes that were made and the lessons that needed to be learned, and that is the absolutely fundamentally biggest one that had to be learned, that witch hunt. But instead of that, what do we see? We see a witch hunt already started within this party. And it took him so long to come round to saying that he was an anti-Zionist. I mean, they've hated Sarah for beginning with that, really, almost. Because it is so vital, as was said, that it's what the position of the party must be put forward strongly and clearly, and as well as being anti-imperialist. Because the thing with it is that what's happening to the Palestinians, I think as the comrade said, that today, and the horrors, this is what awaits us all. This is what humanity is heading towards. That if they get away with that, and they are getting away with it, that is all of these drones, all of this sort of the weaponry and the way look at the thuggery, like Tina's mentioned, in terms of the German police. I mean, what you see continually of young Palestinian women being, absolutely thumped by German police, and it's become a norm, and it's all tied in together. This is the thing with it, and that's why it's so important, as the comrade said, it's so important to recognise that fight and that solidarity it's on a world scale, that we must treat it all and fight for all of us. So solidarity with the Palestinian people want to be of yours.
Hi, Hans-Peter from Marxist Bulletin. I think the speakers mentioned it already. The domestic oppression is obviously goes hand in hand with British foreign policy as well, and the domestic oppression of pro-Palestinian voices across the entire Western world. It's not just women, but in Germany they've literally beaten up children, Palestinian children, in the streets of Berlin. And arrested them with holding them in very painful positions and so on. But the reason why they're doing that, I think, is the bigger picture. Israel serves as the Western imperialists' sort of enforcement attack dog in the Middle East, and that's why they're backing it to every last inch, no matter how huge the crime. And as socialists, obviously, the reason why they try to break the movement here is that if we can't even have solidarity with the victims of our government abroad, what will it mean for the struggles of our neighbors or across the country that we're not directly involved with? That's what they're trying to achieve. People won't stand up for each other anymore. They will just be too afraid to do so. And I think it's encouraging over here to see these big numbers on the streets, but obviously we have the Palestine Action Band that I think your party should definitely be fighting. But the fight against that needs to be connected with a socialist perspective as well, and there are plenty of inspirations that we can take from other countries. I think even today the Italian trade unions have called another big strike to shut down arms shipments to Israel. And that's kind of a good way of linking the struggle for socialism over here with showing practical solidarity with the people abroad, the oppressed, by trying to initiate those kinds of strike actions. And as the first step, kind of pointing the way towards socialism. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not,
I think we can bring it back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ryan, please could you summarize the...
There's a lot of interesting points were raised. I think one of the key issues that we have is the prescription, and it's not just about the prescription itself, it's also about what Palestine action groups like it achieve and represent, and they are people who are sacrificing a lot to try and achieve material wins by disrupting the chains of imperialism that come from our country to across the world. And it's these chains that, as well as allowing the bourgeois classes in this country to extract a wealth of resources from the rest of the world, that is also used to keep us in check at the same time. And using prescription in this way, it is designed to make us afraid to even do anything. And that has massive implications. And many people have disengaged as well from aspects of campaigning and taking risks around actions. For example, when Palestine, now you don't see as many people going and doing actions at arms factories, for instance, because they're worried they'll be tarred with the same brush, treated the same way as Palestine action, even though the legal risk is exactly the same. It's a sort of trying to deter people from taking action. And while this party, when fully activated, can't necessarily do those actions itself, it must aim to build a popular cradle that can allow for people to be able to do these actions, to get away with them, and be protected by their communities. It's an essential part of what we're doing, must be to engage in education-based building so that we can build the power we need to be able to fight against imperialism, so that we can fight our state. Because fighting against imperialism and fighting against our state are the same thing. Everything we do to break the chains of imperialism weakens the power of our own capitalist state to keep us oppressed. And in the same way, the media, the bourgeois, they do use these smears for anti-Semitism and terrorism all the time. But they're the only ones who believe it. It's them and people who are too scared, so that they just go along with it. If we build a party that is organising at every level in society on the ground, what we can do with that is build a consensus that within our society that will protect us from these snares. Because if no one listens to them, who cares what they say? It's just shouting into a void. And one of the, I guess, areas where I see a bit of potential possibly in this party is this ideas of local assemblies and things like that. Now, the way they're built by the party currently is ridiculous, but what they should be is not some sort of place where you just hear a few ideas, take them on board. What we should be using mass assemblies for is for turning them into hubs of organising political development, education and action, where people beyond the party can be tapped in line with strategic organising directed by our political leadership that can then go and achieve material change in our communities against the state, so that we are in a stronger position if we ever come to the point of being able to come near taking power, that we can actually implement our programs. Because right now, if we took electoral power, we wouldn't be able to do everything we wanted to. We need to have the power of our community, and that does include strikes and trade unions being radicalised, so that they are able to actually be effective tools for the working class. Because right now, trade unions are not tools for the working class. They're tools to keep the working class in check. And it needs a massive overhaul of that in order to have them be able to fight, in order to even have them strike against imperialism.
In addition to supporting those who've been criminalized because of Palestine action, I think the new party or everyone on the left should try and break this silence about the current situation, because there is an illusion that there is peace, that there is ceasefire. And that illusion is dangerous, because as I try to explain, people are dying every day still. None of the whole place is like a bomb zone. People say it reminds them of what happened after a nuclear explosion in Japan. This is what we are facing in Gaza. But also, I think people on the left should not relinquish the struggle against the broadcasters, the papers, the newspapers, the state in the West, who tried to sanitize one of the worst, the most horrific crimes of our time. I was listening to some anti-Zionist Holocaust survivors, and they are right to say, when we were told never again, what they meant was never again for us, but okay for others. Right? So we are still in the midst of this genocide, and silence about it is unbelievable. I think there isn't enough done, despite the large demonstrations, despite the protests that we are seeing. In terms of what was mentioned about Corbyn, I think he didn't support the witch hunt, but he didn't do anything about it, and ended up supporting the witch hunt as a result of this. The problem for Corbyn, then and even now, is that we live in a time of very sharp contradictions. Those contradictions in this year are far more serious, given the genocide, than when the anti-Semitism campaign was being launched by the right wing. In such situations, you can't just be nice with other Labour Party members. You can't just be vague about your opinions. You can't rely on your allies to justify your inaction. You have to be sharp and clear and very concise. There is a genocide going on. Imperialism is part of it. Zionism is part of it. We commit this new party to fight it with no stops, no restrictions. And it is precisely the weakness of that kind of leadership that allowed the anti-Semitism campaign to take such a toll on the left in the Labour Party. Ended up, the victim was, at the end of the day, Corbyn himself. But it does look as if he has learned no lessons from that whole scenario. So I'm not very optimistic.
All right, thank you very much.